Hello, good evening. This is VK3SL. This is a test transmission on 160 metres and 2 metres and streaming online. Earlier start tonight. I'm going away tomorrow very early, so it'll be a short missions. This will be just an hour or so, I think, and I'll have a brief listen back on Channel D at the end. So I thought I might do things a little bit differently this time. One of the themes of the week has been listening on to the lectures of Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. His lectures are all up on YouTube. The quite infamous lectures he made at Oxford in London in 1972-73. They're all up and available, and they make compelling listening. Stockhausen had a cult following. By that time, he was an absolute guru. Thousands of people just rallied to his cause. The Beatles were obsessed with him. In fact, he even features on Sgt. Pepper's album. But it's certainly as much about the music. It's also the cult of the personality, I think. His lectures are very compelling. Some of his ideas are just way out, and that makes for compelling listening. So we'll hear this mystic, Stockhausen the mystic. He's very much piggybacking on some of the Eastern sages and philosophers, which inspired him no end, but he alludes to that here. So what I find the most interesting is the recordings he made, the question and answer ends of his session. So you'd go on and describe a work in incredible detail, and then he'd open up to the floor and people would ask him questions, often quite naive questions, but he gave some pretty qualified answers, and it reveals a lot about the man himself. So we'll have a listen to this is lecture 5 part 3. We'll listen to a section of it for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and then a bit after 11:30 we'll resume with some music. So if you feel less inclined, to switch off for a while and see how things go, because we'll follow on with our usual program. So without any further ado, this is VK3SL. We're testing, of course, and we're not being entertained by the infamous guru Karl-Heinz Stockhausen.
As I have sometimes mentioned in this context, it is much more magic to find an apple on the moon than to find a moonstone on the moon. Because a banal object, which is known here, and nobody would even look at it, an ashtray, if you would find it on a different star, it takes on magic. Yes?
I found the speed at which the incidents occurred in your music rather breathtaking. Is it possible that, do you regard the traditional way that we listen to music, or the music that we're brought up on, as it were, as actual barrier to the appreciation of your spatial polyphony, as it were? And if so, what are the implications as far as education of the public go?
Well, I have 6 children, and they pick it up as the most natural thing in the world when they go with me to a rehearsal, or when they hear talk about it. Some like certain works better, or not so well. It must start in early childhood. I mean, there's no other way. I had a teacher in information theory, Meyer Epler, the famous Meyer Epler. He said, beware Stockhausen, it takes at least 35 years until anything comes through. Even with the horses, certain nerves become thicker when you always give them the same signal, he said, physiologically speaking. He said, do you think with human beings it can go much faster? Just wait for another generation. I mean, certain people are just out already with 18 years. Finished. They are old like others with 90, and there are very few, naturally, who are with 80 very young people. It's just the question how much everybody trains himself in renewing constantly his ability to perceive, and well, it needs a lot of spiritual training to remain young. I think everybody has certainly heard about the book The Future Shock of Alvin Toffler. The basic problem of the next 20, 30, oh, not only that, but let's say of the whole time of Aquarius in particular, will be that most of the people can't keep track with the speed of change. They just get a shock, and then it's out. All they need is, in a skyscraper, a meditation center, where they just sit longer and longer every day in order to be fit for the work. But most of the people won't keep, how do you say it? Won't go with the speed of evolution. And that's basically a question of our extrasensitory and sensitory system.
This has probably been touched on slightly before, but I'd like to just dwell on just a bit, and that is the question of the dehumanization in contemporary music that some people have been talking about.
Yeah.
And I mean it specifically of electronic music.
Yes.
And the two criticisms that have been made are both that the medium itself is dehumanized, like
Yes.
the sine wave and
Yes.
the others are very bare, sterile. They don't have the human eccentricities around them that we hear in a concert hall. The second criticism is perhaps a little more fundamental, and that has to do with the actual content. Although you don't divorce it from the form, you call it the form. I mean, there is some sort of content, and presumably this is a reflection of some sort of social phenomenon. And the question is, in effect, if this phenomenon is so dehumanized itself, maybe the art is going to die fairly quickly. I mean, if the art doesn't have the potential of touching basic human concerns such as love, hate, these kinds of things, can it live? Is it really valid art?
Well, there are two possible answers to what you have said. The first one is, it is certainly a mistake to consider all human beings equal. Between, as Albert Schweitzer says, the ape and the saint, there is a whole scale. And they all look like human beings, more or less. There are other people who say that from about 23 years onwards, everybody is responsible for his face, for the way he looks like. What we mean by this is that there are certainly very few people who constantly work on their degree of illumination and on the expansion of their consciousness. And we are in a state as human beings of multiplying with an enormous speed. And I doubt if the most illuminated people will multiply with the highest speed. Which means that in a very necessary and healthy way, subconsciousness is exploding. And I say subconsciousness, not supraconsciousness. The second answer to your question is a little bit more esoteric. If you have ever heard the name Sri Aurobindo, then you might know that there is an Indian sage who died in 1950, who has foreseen several thousand years of human evolution, or involution, as he says. And basically, he says that we are in a situation nowadays which is comparable to the situation when, like in 2001, that's not what he says, I add this in brackets, when the first so-called human being came out of the kingdom of beings that were not called, or that the scientists or the human beings do not call human beings. Well, we say animals. There is nowadays even controversial talk about the fact if not the human beings have been a special breed from the beginning on. Nevertheless, there is that moment in 2001 where the ape takes a bone and kills the other one with a bone. The flesh of intelligence rises him above the others, though he is physically weaker. Aurobindo says that we are at the threshold of a new terrestrial mutation where a few beings, very few beings for the time being, are changing into something else. into a kind of supra-human being. And what you call the dehumanizing actually is the fear of the majority of us that they might not make it. And they call this dehumanize. What they really mean, without being able to verbally formulate it that way, is not the dehumanizing, but the superhumanizing or the suprahumanizing. That jump. That enormous jump. Like from, let's say, from the animal to man, from the man to a superhuman spiritual being. And this is certainly, what concerns my personal experience, true. There are already beings among the human beings who are, in every sense, far beyond the rest. And this is clear from the way, not only the way they live and behave, but from what they can do, what they really can do. And certainly the arts reflect this whole process as well. And this naturally is a moment of extreme crisis, which is that fruitful moment that comes very rare in the world ages, where everything switches on a new level. Where, the consciousness switches on a new level, but not in large numbers. We might ask Aurobindo why not all the animals have become human beings. We can say nowadays they almost have. I mean, the chicken farms are still retarding this process a little bit, but what you eat there is certainly more cardboard than animals. What I mean by this, we have almost eaten up the crust of plants and animals of this world and transformed it into human bones and flesh. And this process will certainly continue with an enormous asymptotic speed until the middle of next century, or a little longer, until we are 15 billion. And then the food certainly will be scratched on the bottom of the sea or produced completely artificially with chemicals. It's a little importance, actually, what we eat. What I mean is that everything is transformed ultimately into human beings, yes. Then there are no animals anymore in a few zoos and in a few photographs. We still can see them, but the principle has been to transform it into human beings. And then the next step is naturally, what are the human beings becoming? At least now we can say only very few will make it. And the general fear and crisis reflects simply that process. Most of the beings feel they have that inner clock which tells them where the evolution is going, but they can't make it in this life. So that creates antagonism and wars and fights and discussions and God knows what. Exterminations, fascist systems, all sorts of things. It's a sign of rebirth of humanity. Yes?
Are you writing music for the suprahuman minority?
Well, I would say if you all want to belong to it, yes. I'm not writing music for anybody, which means I just write it because it must be written and it comes into my mind, and I have to work very hard to get it down, and then you do with it whatever you like.
Well then, since you spend so much trouble preparing and communicating the music, does it worry you that it doesn't communicate to a very large proportion of human beings?
Oh, no. If I would like to do that, I would certainly have been the best imitator of the Beatles. And what they got in 7 years, I might have continued a little longer, because they would never have worked in a quartet, you may be sure. No, that's just the question if the large number is a sign for anything. The large number is a sign for mediocrity, or even for banality. What it is. Yes.
How do you suggest we differentiate between electronic music and garbage, musical garbage?
Oh, electronic music. Most of the electronic music is garbage. There's no question about that, because the most untalented composers have shown up in the studios because they had no chance to compose somewhere else. So they sit in the studio until someone says, well, okay, try your luck, and then there they are, because they believe in the means more than in themselves. They think if they use modern means, it will be interesting just because of the means, which is a terrible error.
Now, are you concerned about largely in raising the level of consciousness, or the broadening the consciousness of your listeners to this music, so that they are aware of all sounds?
It would be wonderful if the awareness, the consciousness rises. But I have said that there are very, very critical how do you say, borderlines, and they cannot be easily overcome. So I have no illusions about the future. Everybody, as I said before, everybody uses my music anyway. If I break my neck tonight in a car crash, then little importance. The people use my music anyway the way they want. They are absolutely free, and there should be no systems to tell people what they should think about music and how they should experience it, because everybody is different. In that sense, I'm an extreme individualist, and I suggest that everybody makes up his mind about his life and the world and Mr. Stockhausen's music.
Mr. Stockhausen, some of the things you said made me think that perhaps there is some connection between the kind of experiences which you're interested in and the kinds of experiences which some people at any rate have connected with psychedelic experiences. Are you aware of any such connection?
No, certainly. Everything belongs together in our present day's scene. That is simply another answer. The people who can't make it through spiritual yoga make it through chemicals, or try to make it through chemicals. The only trouble is that whenever the chemical is not in the body, they fall flat, which means they just fall on their nose, and they need the chemical immediately again in order to keep that level of sort of passive and totally egocentric perception. But what I want is that through spiritual discipline, someone rises on a level which he doesn't lose anymore, and which he can then give to others, where he can be really productive and serve the society. That he is in a state where he constantly can give. He has a surplus production. And I have seen in my life a lot of very dear, close friends who became almost uninterested in the rest of the world when they were in this state.
You find that in the rooms where they're playing Stockhausen, they also tend to be smoking marijuana. Does it strike you that there's a connection?
I can't understand you. If I go around the campus and find in the rooms what?
Where they're playing Stockhausen,
yeah,
they're also smoking marijuana. Does it strike you that there's a connection between the two?
Oh no, I know this from my personal assistant, who is an American and who has described me that he has heard in Contacte for the first time in his life under the influence, even under the influence of this enormously slowed down time. He has heard things which he obviously had not heard before when he was a student in the composition class, which means that obviously for certain amounts of time expands the preciseness and the depth of perception. It speeds up our perception time, or it slows it down. And as the most realistic futurologists say, already around 2000, almost 9 out of 10 people will be always turned on with some kind of drug, not just with 2 or 3, but you can buy them by then, naturally, because the individual responsibility for yourself increases with the modern society. You can buy a drug which speeds you up to the speed of an animal that lives 400 years, like a turtle. Yes, and you have the perception of a turtle, or you can have the perception of a one-day fly, which means you perceive so fast that what another one needs 70 years for, you perceive it in that time. The only trouble is how long you can stretch the ability of your body, and if you could not perhaps reach such different states of timing and spacing just without chemicals. That is a problem. And it will be a terrible problem of communication, because you never know on which wavelength your partner is. You just ask him, are you on 400 or 233? Then he says, okay, then, yeah, could you switch me on too, because I want to talk to you. That will be the problem of total atomization of the society, because fear, that famous fear about which I spoke if they make it or not, this enormous jump, spiritual jump. This fear produces naturally anxiety and they want to have experience that is described by very famous yogis or lamas. So they read about it and they think there is something, and there is something very profound, very important. And we should make it, but we should try to find ways which are spiritual. You can do it chemically, but it has its enormous setbacks. Our body cannot be stretched in any direction. It breaks.
How would you advise a non-super person to expand his consciousness in order to perceive the sort of things you're talking about? I mean, without using drugs, how are we to go about expanding our minds to meet this new challenge you're posing to us?
Well, there are many ways. First of all is there are, for example, there are a million books now available who can say it much better than myself. Read the book, let's say, Concentration of Maoni. You can buy it in any bookstore, and he tells you what you can do for exercises, daily exercises. And then another book is called Meditation, of the same author. He is particularly good, that's why I mention him. And another one is called Samadhi. There's so much available nowadays in reaching these new disciplines which go beyond the intellectual training that we have learned in schools and universities. It's just starting, yeah.
The yogis and lamas you've spoken about who have developed a rarefied state of perception have done it only by withdrawing from society in isolation.
Not Aurobindo. He was a very important figure in the spiritual revolutionary war against the Englishmen in India. And Gandhi could only build his whole activity on the basis that was laid by Aurobindo. Oh no, his brother, and he himself got a lifetime sentence, my dear. He sent his brother to Europe in order to learn how to make bombs. And he was, compared to Gandhi, he was ferociously against the Germans during the Third Reich, whereas Gandhi was always advising the Englishmen the non-violent war, etc. And Aurobindo understood quite well, like in the old Indian history, where you see the battle between Hanuman and the demons. He said, wipe them out, because they will be reborn in a much better form than they are there. So he was a very practical and pragmatic man, and not at all someone who would withdraw on the peak of the Himalaya and sit there and be happy for himself. That's exactly what his new yoga is all about. Not withdraw, but feed it back and try to keep that state and constantly making contact with the rest. Yes?
Do you believe that there's a natural limit to the development of music beyond which no further progress can be made?
I don't believe that there is any natural limit, no matter where and how and when. Yeah.
When you compose or construct your music, do you try to introduce into it any form of symmetry or pattern, or is this a completely random?
Oh, no. But this leads us on to tomorrow morning, I would say. Read, for example, an article about the shifting of symmetries in the music of Webern, which I have written in the early 50s. The axial symmetries and what's the other name? 2 plus 2. Axial is when you have 3 and 1 in the middle, for example. There's another kind of symmetry. Symmetries by pairs or impairs. Yeah, right. Non-retrograde or retrograde, we say also. Well, certainly, that is very important in all my work.
Well, listening to the music we've heard tonight, I couldn't find any pattern in it at all. It just seemed to be random to me. Perhaps I'm one of these 999 out of...
No. The way is long, as they say. but fruitful. Yeah.
Where to reach.
I have a feeling you need more of this sort of discussions because you make me stay here until tomorrow. Yeah?
What is reach the level of consciousness that is needed to appreciate your music? If one were to reach it, would you suggest one should stay there at that level, that open to all forms of perception, to touch, to sight, and to sound? Or should one switch on to it and switch off during the time one is listening to your music? I suggest that if you were one is always in this state of complete awareness, such as a drug might bring to you, a greater sense of expansion of time, that it might eventually just send one a bit mad.
Oh. You see, my music is not so important in this whole context. You are always referring to my music. What does it mean, my music? It's just something that has come into my mind, and I'm working all the time, and that's it. So I'm a myth. I'm a name, and if I go away, then they're just a tag on something that vibrates within yourself when you are confronted with this so-called music. It has a name, so in order to identify. But that's so like Beethoven. Who is he? He was a very miserable person, I must say, as a human being, and he is a myth for something that we are, that is within ourselves. We are echoing. Beethoven is part of us, or he doesn't exist. And in that sense, I think it's only a means. It's like a spiritual food of all sorts. And it will be used by certain people who discover a certain identity of what they are and what is vibrating. They choose more of it. They like it. Liking means, as I always say, remembering. When I like something, then I discover something that I have been before, that is profoundly already within me. It resonates like a piano that you hit. The whole life should be then on that level, not just when you listen to music. Pardon?
Your music is a sort of teaching mechanism.
I think everything should be this kind of self-teaching mechanism, yes. Everything. Every talk, every food, everything. Pardon?
I was struck when you used the phrase, we become what we experience at one stage. Is that a metaphor, and if not, what does it mean?
No. I very often say you become what you eat. And only in a very... Yes, naturally. That's why since a certain time I really stopped eating meat of pigs. And meat in general, I mean, it's very difficult to integrate it. Because only very few people transform what they eat into what they are. That needs, you see, that what they eat becomes what they are. But most of the people become what they eat. Well, it literally means what I'm saying.
I'm afraid I don't understand English, if that's the case. I think.
You become what you eat. If you eat bananas, you become you
become a big banana.
Yes. Yes. If you eat a lot of cows and bulls and God knows what, and then one by one you become deeply influenced by their atomic structure. You become what they are. So you have to be very careful in what you eat. and yes, you see, I'm defending a new kind of, how do you call it when human beings eat each other? Yes, on a higher level, I certainly would defend a new kind of cannibalism. Because why? Except it's very difficult to choose someone whom I would eat, I must say. Yeah, but you see, the people who really were very close to the magic force of life, they knew this. They would only eat someone who was the best foe. The best foe. And I think the fact that still nowadays at the court of China, they have a very special delicacy, if you are informed about it, that they for example, they excite monkeys up to the degree that they are very angry, and in that state they cut off their skull and eat the fresh brain. That is a delicacy at the court in China. Isn't it? There you are.
You said something about, I think, a mind dividing into two, didn't you? I may be misquoting it. Our consciousness dividing into two when we're hearing.
Becoming polyphonic beings.
Yes.
Becoming polyphonic beings.
Oh, yes, I said following two things at the same time. That is what we call the cocktail effect in information theory, which means that when you are 5 people in a room, or 10 people in a room, then 5 couples of 2 can understand each other, though they are all talking with maximum loudness. Which means you can follow 2 lines at once. And in old polyphonic music, in the Bach piece, for example, someone who has learned to listen better than other people, he can follow 2 lines at the same time. Or, as many people say, Napoleon could talk to someone and at the same time write a letter.
Only 2 at once.
Yeah, well, yes. You see, it's already quite a lot, isn't it? But in music, we sometimes can follow. Doing and perceiving is something else. So we can follow up to 3, if it's not too complicated, 3 layers of events. Watching you, I'm talking, my brain is going almost automatic because I see what your colors are, etc. And at the same time, I can still think of someone in Cologne now. How he looks like, etc. I have 3 things. I'm doing 3 things at once.
This is like the housewife sitting at home, watching television while knitting and talking to her husband, listening for the baby crying.
Well, I would say the latter one is certainly excluded. Otherwise, she would jump up and leave the husband alone for a while. Yes, well, we are all trained daily in this polyphonic new way of becoming polyphonic beings. Yeah. Yes.
What do you think of the effects of living in an environment where there is a continuous background noise, i.e. an urban environment?
Where a normal environment.
An urban environment.
An urban.
Yes. I mean, what is your reaction to the noise in Oxford?
What is that question?
Not the noise first. What is your reaction to the noise in Oxford?
Very calm here compared to London.
Well, it is in this hall, yes, but I mean out in the streets, Corn Market, High Street.
I will ask myself tonight because I'm not conscious of it. I have arrived this afternoon. I don't know.
Will urban noise generally have on man, do you think? Do you have any opinion on that?
Yeah, like all the pollution. Acoustic pollution is even worse than the rest. I'm trying to sue my neighbor since about 6 months because he has 5 shepherds and a parrot. And the parrot is yelling from 6 o'clock in the morning, Harald, all the time. and I tell you, it calls out the devil in me. I mean, I'm thinking of all sorts of poisons and God knows what. You may be sure. Well, it's just impossible. I'm trying to sue him now, and we have just set up already the whole legal case when we go to the court. All my friends come with me, and professors and so. And Kontarski, the pianist, has already decided that he will come and said, may Mr. Stockhausen leave the room for a moment, please? And then they say, why? I said, yeah, well, I have to tell you something very serious. And then, because I want to get my case through, naturally, and we have informed each other what to do. So we made the plan that he will tell the judge that, you see, Mr. Stockholm, since already 6 years, since he lives in that house, he is showing very strange... You see, he has asked already in three scores now, in Microphony 1 and in Momenta as well, and in the new score, the well-trained musicians, I mean, like me, for example, I'm a professor of music, a pianist, to bark like dogs. You see, he says barking, and I think that goes a little too far. I think you should really stop these shepherds, because God knows what he is doing next. etc. Well, we tried to get rid of this musical garbage, as I say. I have invented a garbage disposal device for acoustic garbage, which is the following. I just talked about it today. In every larger city, I play Leonardo now, there will be microphones in every corner. And the microphones pick up all the noises that are there, the sounds, and they will be fed into a computer which analyzes immediately the sound wave, and then through thousands of small speakers, which are also distributed everywhere, produces them in counterphase, so that every person who's coming into this area, he says, and then I say, then they should install public, how do you say, dressing rooms, like pissoirs, etc. Like in France, we have them right on the road, in Paris, where the people can acoustically see? Yes. What is the right word? You know what I mean? They're there, they can say anything what they want. There are wonderful walls like in Israel, the wall of where you can really shout against and say all those things, and then when you have emptied yourself, okay, then you go back into the silent area. Yeah.
Sorry, another question. The stewards asked me if you could play.
Oh, by all means, yes. Thank you.
Well, there we have it. That was Mr. Stockhausen in full flight in one of his question and answer sessions from these lectures, his Oxford lectures, and they're all up online, and I think they're the best excerpts are the interactions with the audience, because they're all so sort of conservative and just bewildered by this guru character. Now, I have to say, I don't personally agree with everything he says. It's just this extraordinary conviction, and he's a magnetic person to watch and and I think to listen to. So just for the fact that he has a reason, and he's worked out his philosophy to the nth degree. And such extraordinary conviction. So we'll play a couple more in the future, perhaps not for that long, but that was one of the most hilarious ones. Okay, well, this is VK3SL, we're testing, and we'll now move into some modulated sound, and not of the Stockhausen ilk, but we'll go back to the 1920s, and we'll see what we've got on the list. Now, Mr. Prozoot has put up some more this week. He's put up some flexi discs. These are pretty rare. Certainly you don't see them in Australia very often. Flexo recording. And we'll hear the music of Lou Reynolds. Know nothing about Lou Reynolds, but he's done a good job processing these discs from 1931. This is VK3SL testing. that was Lou Reynolds at the... where was it? It's at the Sweet Spall Room in Oakland, California, recorded in 1931. That track was called Headin' for Better Times, classic Depressions era song. And I gather these Flexo records are an early form of pressed vinyl. And they're certainly a sort of a low-grade product, hence the poor recording. But, yeah, I've never heard of Lou Reynolds, and he probably wouldn't have got a gig on one of the other labels, so at least... we're preserving the heritage. Care of Mr. Prozoot. Now, something interesting's popped up this week. That is a recording of Paul Whiteman's band from 1927. It's an unissued take of the band with Crosby and Co. And it's got an interesting background because you might be aware that there was the Gene Goldkett Orchestra. They were playing in the, they were sort of one of the most famous, most refined dance bands in the States, and it featured Bix and Bill Rank and all of that. In fact, it was sort of modelled around Bix, had Bill Challis as the arranger, and that band in, where was it, in Detroit, went into financial problems, and Paul Whiteman bought the band. He just bought the band and then integrated them, and I think he had them in his sights for some time. Now, just before they did join, he sort of sharpened up his own act with, he sort of made his own band sound a little bit like Goldkett, and he even had a Bix imitator, was a very famous trumpet player, Red Nichols, and Red Nichols in this instance plays just like Bix. He hired Red Nichols for this next session, and it was just before, and I think it was sort of like a bit of bait to get the other keep the other band intact for the buyout. So yeah, that's the sort of background to this. Anyhow, it has a great trumpet solo with Red Nichols and of course Bing Crosby, and some terrific slap string bass as well. Now, who was the bass player with Whiteman at that time? It was, let me think, Al Aymer, that's right. And Steve Brown played earlier on, but it was Al Aymer playing string bass. And otherwise, it's the classic Whiteman lineup before he augmented the band with Goldkett, very shortly before. So we'll have a listen now to Side by Side. This is an unissued take, and interesting stuff. Early Crosby as well. You hear him doing a bit of a scat, and it's a terrific arrangement, wonderful music. VK3SL testing.
When they've all had their quarrels and parted, we'll be the same as we started. Just travel along, singing a song, side by side.
Yeah, what an arrangement. All those little chromatic runs at the end. Yeah, and it featured Red Nichols and in a very Bixian guise. Paul Whiteman's band from 1927. An unissued take. So, yeah, good to hear that, and good to get the background. I was just reading about it before. Okay, we've got to push on, because I'm not going to go too late tonight. Now, it's obligatory on these missions to have some vintage Japanese modulated stuff. Yes. So we're going to go back to 1933. Kamoni Kashisha. Kanashia, I think. I'm not going to try and pronounce these. It just makes me feel like an idiot. I think I'll just play the music. Oh, no, not music. Just play the modulated sound. VK3SL in Turning Japanese. The ethereal modal textures of old Japan. That's from the vintage Japanese Muzak site. So yeah, there's a lot more where that came from, and I'll keep exploiting it because I find it takes me somewhere. In the words of Mr. Stockhausen, I have a transcendental experience when I listen to Japanese music from that time. It's very evocative. Okay, well, we're moving on and sort of getting to the home stretch already tonight. I'm not going to go that far after midnight tonight. Now, Jacob Collier is a strong theme in this household, and he's site has got so much material to choose from. It's all amazing. Particularly like the works where he's collaborating with other people. And there's more and more of that sort of material. So, we'll have a listen to this thing. It's called Sky Above. Now, I don't know exactly who he is working with here, because I haven't got my glasses on, but I'll have a look. And let's see if I can get some more information. Well, it says with Maro and Becca Stevens. I don't know who they are. Okay, and with Catherine Tickle as a piper in this recording. I think that's in the intro. It's Catherine Tickle on the pipes. Okay, right. We'll have a listen to this. It's quite, again, it's a very evocative piece. And it has a lot of gear changes along the way, but you get a sense of Mr. Collier's genius in the way that he pushes conventional harmony to its extremes with extraordinary voicing and all perfectly in tune, and all made in his lounge room. Okay, over to you, Jacob Collier. This is VK3SL testing.
song along to sing it all the way. Gonna stay a video, gonna stay a video. I'm gonna blow the winds of change and sing, I'll never go astray. Gonna stay a video, gonna stay a video. I'm gonna sing the song along to sing it all the way. Gonna stay a video, gonna stay a video. I'm gonna blow the winds of change and sing, I'll never go astray. Gonna stay a video, gonna stay a video.
Let the rain fall down, it's gonna be okay. Let it all fall down, when it all falls down. Let it all fall down, it's gonna be okay. Gonna be okay. Don't know nothing about me. Up to stars in
the world. Sky Above with Jacob Collier and Friends, recorded a couple of years ago, and one of the many remarkable offerings on his website. So it's good to draw upon that resource. Amazing. And we hear Jacob Collier play through the big Type 3 speakers daily in this household, especially now we're on the holidays. Okay, well, we're moving towards the end, I'm afraid. I'm not going to go much longer, but discovered another wonderful soprano. This is Nadine Sierra. She's been singing at the Met for a little while. She's about 31. And I was going to do a program on the glass harmonica. It's this amazing instrument with a whole lot of sort of bowls all arranged at different pitches with water pouring over them, and you place your hands on the bowls and you give these extraordinary ethereal sounds. And the instrument goes way back to Benjamin Franklin. Mozart wrote some music for the glass harmonica, and a few composers in the 19th century did as well, including Donizetti. So we'll hear the original version of the Mad Scene from Lucia di Lammermoor, where poor old, what's her name? I can't even think of who the protagonist is. Isn't that terrible? It doesn't matter. She's just murdered her betrothed, and she goes mad. She's covered in blood, and she sings this incredibly dramatic aria. It's sort of the aria, really, from the coloratura repertoire, and certainly made Joan Sutherland famous. But this is not Joan Sutherland. We're going to hear Nadine Sierra, young and upcoming artist, and this is from a live performance, and I will play it back in stereo, and we'll have a listen to her extraordinary tessitura accompanied by glass harmonica, and I have to say it sounds so extraordinary. I love it. This is VK3SL testing, and here we go.
Sacrifice
Well, how's that for a high E flat? Yes, we heard Nadine Sierra with the, I don't know which opera company it was, La Fenice Opera House. And the Mad Scene from Lucia di Lammermoor by Donizetti. And I remember seeing Joan Sutherland when I was about 11. Yes, I was in primary school still, I think about grade 5. And a music teacher took us all in the back of his car. We all crammed in, no seatbelts. Went to the Palais Theatre, and I heard Dame Joan Sutherland sing that aria, and it was a life-changing experience. Sing it live. She get covered in blood on the stage. She looked terribly dishevelled, and but they did transpose the aria down a semitone. So instead of a high E flat, she actually sang a high D. But we got to meet her afterwards, and I've even got the program here with To Me from Joan Sutherland, and the picture of her in her dishevelled, blood-stained white gown. And so, yes, that's an aria I really enjoy. And that's so beautiful with the glass harmonica. You mostly play with flute, usually the offset, the other part's the flute. In this instance, they use this very rare instrument, which Donizetti actually wrote into the score, so it's quite authentic. So they probably brought the player in and all of his apparatus just for that one scene. And he probably got a whole night's call for just one aria. Yeah, so yeah, that's a bit of grand opera. Well, that's our penultimate piece, because we're going to finish in a momento. And to finish tonight, I'm going to play another version of Beethoven's String Quartet number 15, opus 32, the final movement, the Allegro Appassionato, and it's a rondo actually. And in this instance, it's played by the Quartetto Italiano. Now, this is a work that haunts me. It stays with me all the time. It's always in the back of my mind. I think it shows so much despair on poor Mr. Beethoven's part. He was a terrible, miserable character, as Stockhausen said. But he also had the opposite. He had these moments of complete elation. And you sense this in this piece. It sort of goes back from one to the other. So it shifts. And so many great quartets put their heart and soul into interpreting this movement, because it's considered to be some of Beethoven's greatest music, really. And he was totally deaf when he wrote it. He couldn't hear anything at all. But so I thought for the next few missions I might actually feature different quartets playing it, and you can hear their different interpretations. So in this instance, we're hearing the Quartetto Italiano, one of my faves, recorded in the mid-70s, towards the end of their career. They were together for a long time. They started in 1945, I think, and they disbanded in about 1980. Most of them lived well into the 2000s. But here we have a recording from about 1975. Anyhow, we'll hear this and then I'll listen back on Channel D. Now, just a quick note that I won't be testing next week. I will not be here, and so there'll be no test missions next week, but I think I'll be back by the following week, I think. Not 100% sure, but I think. So for the thousands and thousands and thousands of people, non-people who listen, and the one or two who do listen, that's important information. All right, so let's have a listen to this Beethoven to close tonight, and I'll listen back afterwards. And it is truly wondrous music, I think, this quartet. So, yeah, this is the final movement from Opus 132, and I'm VK3SL testing.